Hi, I'm Brian Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with author, entrepreneur, thought leader Seth Godin. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian.
You talked in the book a lot about becoming more personal. You say that we need to bring more humanity back into the work that we do, and that's a part of being an artist. But how do we get more personal when HR department doesn't want anything to do with that?
Right.
Or the attorneys?
Well, let's be clear, first of all, about personal. I don't need to know how many kids you have, and I don't need to know, this transparency can be taken way too far beyond what we need. I don't know anything about Pablo Picasso's life. I don't know anything about, Edward Albee's life. I don't need to. All I need to know is that when they made their art, they opened themselves up because they put an emotion on the table. Now, if you work in an organization that insists on keeping you in a tiny replaceable box, you have to make a choice about whether you have a future there or not. Because one, organizations like that aren't going to continue to thrive. And two, you're probably not going to reach the next level there because they'll just find someone else to put in your slot. So the example that's pretty simple is, 3 years ago, the difference between Apple and Dell is no one could blame Michael Dell for the products he was making. They were obvious. They were cheap and they were plentiful.
Right.
Whereas Apple would come out with something and someone would say, I hate that. That's personal. It's personal to say, here, I made this, and for someone else to say, I hate that. We're too focused on how do I avoid criticism and not focused enough on how do I make a difference.
So you think that's the stumbling block? You think that's where people are getting stuck because they're not willing to be vulnerable, to take a risk? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, so Brene Brown has spoken about this more eloquently than I, but vulnerability means putting something into the world and being willing to let the world respond or react. If you come out with something that's polished and has no edges on it, and you can say, the committee made this, it's not my fault, there's no vulnerability there, right? Whereas if, it's sort of, I don't use a lot of sports analogies, but the difference between Vince Lombardi and the typical corporate football coach today, win and lose, Vince Lombardi's on the hook. Today, it's a system. It's a process. It's
Moneyball.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not personal. There's no vulnerability there. The highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low. In a world where we can connect to whomever we want, why would we connect to someone who is boring and selfish? We're going to connect to people who are interesting, walking the tightrope, and generous.